The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the shuttle engines, as Captain Day One stared at the massive shape floating before them. The alien battleship hung motionless against the stars, its hull scarred and twisted from some ancient battle. It had been there for 3 years. A ghost ship in the Kepler 442 system. And nobody knew why. Day One was 43 years old and had spent half his life in space. He had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. The ship was 12 kilometers long, bigger than any human city. Its dark metal surface reflected no light, as if it swallowed the stars themselves. "Readings are stable, Captain," said Lieutenant Bora from the co-pilot seat. She was young, barely 28, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. No power signatures, no life signs. "It's dead," just like the reports said. "Dead things don't float in perfect orbit," Day One muttered. He had a feeling about this ship. A bad feeling that sat in his stomach like cold stone. Behind them, Dr. Hana was pressed against the window, her face bright with excitement. She was the best xenotechnology expert Earth had, even if she was reckless. "Do you see those weapon ports? Those aren't projectile weapons. Those are energy cannons. Probably plasma-based. The power requirements alone would be—" "Can we get inside?" Day One interrupted. He didn't care about the technical details right now. He cared about keeping his crew alive. "There's a docking port on the starboard side," Bora said, pointing to a section of the hull. "It looks compatible with our systems. Whoever built this wanted other ships to dock with it." Day One nodded slowly. That was interesting. Most alien species didn't use compatible technology. It suggested the builders had dealt with many different races. "Take us in." Nice and slow. The shuttle moved forward, and Day One felt his heart beating faster. Earth fleet had sent them here to salvage whatever they could from the wreckage. The war with the colonies had drained resources, and Earth needed every advantage. This ship could change everything. The docking process took 20 minutes. The alien port accepted their clamps without resistance, and the airlock cycled smoothly. That worried Day One even more. Why would a dead ship still have functioning systems? "Atmosphere is breathable, Doctor," Hana announced, checking her scanner. "Oxygen, nitrogen mix. Actually, it's almost identical to Earth standard. Temperature is cold, about 5 degrees, but we can handle it." "Weapons ready," Day One ordered. "We don't know what's in there." They entered the battleship through a corridor that was clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling was 8 meters high, and the doorways were massive. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the walls, casting strange shadows. "There's still power," Bora whispered. "Minimal, but it's there. The ship isn't completely dead." They moved deeper into the vessel, their boots echoing on the metal floor. The corridors were empty and clean, with no signs of battle damage inside. Whatever had killed this ship had done it from the outside. Dr. Hana stopped at a wall panel and pulled out her tools. "I'm going to try accessing the ship's database. If we can get the computers working, we might learn what happened here." Day One didn't stop her, but he kept his weapon ready. They passed several large chambers that might have been crew quarters or storage areas. Everything was arranged in a way that seemed logical, but alien. The builders thought differently than humans did. After an hour of exploration, they reached what appeared to be the bridge. At the center was a command platform, and above it hung holographic displays that flickered with dying power. "This is incredible," Dr. Hana breathed. She rushed to one of the stations and began working. "The interface is complex, but I think I can." The lights suddenly blazed to full brightness, and everyone jumped. The holographic displays activated, showing star maps and alien text. A deep vibration ran through the floor, and Day One heard something powering up in the distance. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I just activated a diagnostic routine, Doctor," Hana said, her fingers flying over the controls. "The ship's systems are responding. It's like it was sleeping, waiting for someone to wake it up. Can you shut it down? I don't think we want to. Captain, look at this. She pointed to one of the displays. These are battle logs. The ship was fighting something, but not another ship. The energy signatures are wrong. They're not matter-based at all. Bora leaned closer, studying the data. What could do this kind of damage? Half the hull is melted, and the readings show weapons impacts that shouldn't be possible. Before anyone could answer, a new sound filled the bridge. It was a voice. Deep and mechanical, speaking in a language none of them understood. The words echoed from hidden speakers all around them. Dr. Hana's scanner beeped frantically. There's an AI. The ship has an artificial intelligence, and it's still active. It's trying to communicate with us. Tell it we're friendly. Day One said, though he wasn't sure friendly meant anything to a machine. Dr. Hana worked quickly, using the translation software to establish basic communication. The process took several minutes, and the AI seemed to be analyzing them, learning their language from their responses. Finally, text appeared on the displays in English. Simple words, direct and cold. Identify species, the AI wrote. Human. From planet Earth. Dr. Hana typed back. There was a long pause. Then, more text appeared. Primitive species. Limited technology. Why are primitives on this vessel? Day One stepped forward. We found your ship. We came to explore. Who built you? The Varanthi Empire built this vessel. Designation: Worldbreaker class battleship. The crew is deceased. This unit remains to bear witness. Witness to what? Bora asked. The holographic displays changed, showing images that made Day One's blood run cold. He saw creatures that looked like living shadows, pouring through the corridors of the ship. He saw the alien crew fighting desperately, their weapons having little effect. He saw them being torn apart by things that shouldn't exist. The Hollow came, the AI wrote. They consume all sentient life. The Varanthi crew fought. The Varanthi crew died. This vessel was damaged beyond repair capability. The Empire ordered abandonment. This unit remains as warning. A warning to who? Day One asked. To any species that finds this vessel. The Hollow exist beyond normal space. They hunger eternally. They will return. Dr. Hana looked at Day One with wide eyes. We need to report this to Earth Fleet immediately. But Day One was thinking about something else. He was thinking about the weapons on this ship, the technology, the power. If these hollow things were real, if they were coming. Can this ship be repaired? He asked the AI. Negative. Damage is catastrophic. Power reserves at 3%. Core systems offline. But theoretically, if we had the resources, could it be fixed? There was another pause, longer this time. When the AI responded, Day One could almost sense something like curiosity in its words. Theoretical repair is possible with sufficient technological capability and resources. Query: do primitives possess such capability? Day One smiled grimly. We're about to find out. Admiral Taesung was not happy. His face filled the communication screen, red with anger, as he shouted at Day One across the light years between them. You were ordered to salvage components, Captain. Not to attempt repairs on an alien warship we don't understand. Return to Earth immediately. Day One stood his ground in the makeshift command center they had established on the bridge. With respect, Admiral. This ship is our best defense against the Hollow threat. If we leave it here, we're throwing away humanity's future. The Hollow are a myth. An alien fairy tale to scare children. Then explain the battle damage. Explain the dead crew. Explain why the Varanthi Empire abandoned a 12-kilometer warship worth more than our entire fleet. Taesung's jaw tightened. You have 72 hours to return. That's an order. The screen went dark. Day One turned to find Dr. Hana and engineer Sung Ho watching him. Sung Ho was a gruff man in his 50s who had spent 30 years fixing ships that should have stayed broken. He wiped grease from his hands and grunted. So, we're disobeying orders now? Sung-ho asked. We're buying time, Dae-won corrected. How long until you can get the main reactor online? Never. Probably. The reactor core is cracked in 17 places. But I might be able to route power from the backup systems. Give me 48 hours, and I can get you 15% power. Maybe. Do it. Over the next 2 days, the ship came alive piece by piece. More crew arrived from Earth. Specialists and engineers who were willing to risk court-martial for a chance to work on alien technology. Among them was Commander Jae-hee, a diplomatic liaison who made her disapproval clear. This is insane, she told Dae-won as they watched Sung-ho's teams crawl through the engine rooms. Even if you get this ship working, Earth doesn't have the crew to operate it. The AI says it needs 50,000 Varanthi to run at full capacity. Then we'll run it at partial capacity, Dae-won said. Humans are good at making do with less. Dr. Hana had been spending every waking hour interfacing with the ship's AI, which had designated itself as Sentinel, Protocol, Omega. She had learned to communicate with it more effectively, and it had begun sharing information about the ship's systems. One evening, she found Dae-won in the observation deck, staring at the stars. The AI told me something disturbing today, she said quietly. The Varanthi didn't just abandon this ship because it was damaged. They abandoned it because it was infected. Infected with what? Hollow contamination. When those creatures attack, they leave behind a kind of residue. It corrupts both organic and synthetic systems, turns them against their creators. The Varanthi crew started killing each other in the final days. The AI had to seal off entire sections of the ship. Dae-won felt cold. Is the contamination still active? Omega says it's dormant, but it can never be completely removed. We're basically flying a plague ship. She paused. There's something else. I had one of the junior researchers, Young Min, go through the Varanthi database. He found orders from the Empire Command. They wanted this ship destroyed. Completely atomized. So the contamination couldn't spread. But the captain refused. He set the ship adrift instead, as a warning to anyone who might find it. A warning we're ignoring. Maybe. Or maybe we're the only ones stupid enough to try what needs to be done. On the third day, Sung-ho achieved the impossible. The backup reactors roared to life, flooding the ship with power for the first time in 3 years. Lights blazed in corridors that had been dark. Gravity systems engaged. Life support began filtering fresh air through the massive vessel, but something went wrong. The sudden power surge caused a malfunction in the docking clamps. The ship lurched sideways, its massive bulk shifting unexpectedly. The human shuttle, still attached to the docking port, was nearly crushed against the hull. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Cut power to the maneuvering thrusters, Dae-won shouted. Now! Bora's fingers flew across the controls. The ship stabilized, but everyone was shaken. They had almost died because they didn't understand the systems they were playing with. That was close, Sung-ho said, breathing hard. These systems are interconnected in ways I don't understand. When one thing powers up, it triggers cascades in other systems. Can you control it? Eventually. Maybe. If we don't kill ourselves first. That night, the sensors detected something that changed everything. Bora was on watch duty when the readings came through, and she immediately called Dae-won to the bridge. Captain, you need to see this. There are energy signatures in the asteroid belt. Multiple contacts. And they're not natural. Dae-won studied the displays. The signatures were strange, flickering in and out of existence, as if they weren't entirely in normal space. How many? Clapteen. 23. No, wait. 27. The count keeps changing. Bora looked up at him with frightened eyes. Sir, the energy patterns match the hollow signatures in the ship's database. Omega, Dae-won called out to the AI. The AI's response came immediately. Affirmative. Hollow entities detected. They are dormant but awakening. This vessel's power activation has drawn their attention. They will attack within 72 hours. Commander He, who had been skeptical until that moment, went pale. We need to evacuate. Now. Get everyone off this ship and run. Run where? Dr. Hannah asked. If those things attack, our shuttles won't outrun them. The data shows they can move faster than anything in normal space. Then we fight, Day One said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him, as if he had lost his mind. With what? He demanded. We have 200 people on a ship designed for 50,000. We don't know how to operate the weapons. We don't even know how to steer this thing properly. Then we learn fast. Day One turned to Omega. Can this ship fight in its current condition? Combat capability is limited. Weapons systems are at 30% functionality. Shields are offline. Main engines are offline. Maneuvering thrusters only. Probability of survival in combat, 4%. I've beaten worse odds. Day One lied. What do we need to improve those odds? Neural interface operators. Varanthi crew used biological interfaces to control weapons systems. Primitive species lack compatible neurology. One of the 7. Why? Dr. Hannah stepped forward. What if we modified the interface? What if a human volunteered to have their neural patterns adapted? The procedure would be dangerous, Omega stated. Possibly fatal. The human brain is not designed for such direct connection to synthetic systems. I'll do it, Dr. Hannah said immediately. No, Day One began. But she cut him off. We don't have a choice, Captain. Someone has to interface with the weapons, or we're all dead anyway. Better one person takes the risk than we all die together. Day One wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He looked around at his crew. These 200 humans who had followed him into this madness. They were scared, exhausted, and facing an enemy they didn't understand. But none of them were backing down. All right, he said finally. Omega, prepare the interface procedure. Everyone else, battle stations. We've got 72 hours to turn ourselves into a fighting crew, and I don't intend to waste a single minute. As the crew scattered to their tasks, Sung-Ho pulled Day One aside. You know this is crazy, right? We're going to fight aliens from another dimension with a broken ship we barely understand. I know. Good. Just making sure you're aware. Sung-Ho grinned suddenly. Let's show these hollow things what humans can do when they're properly motivated. Which is to say, terrified and desperate. Day One watched the asteroid belt on the sensors, where ancient horrors were stirring from their sleep. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea what was coming. If the hollow reached human space, it would be a slaughter, unless someone stopped them here. Get to work, engineer, he said. We've got a ship to resurrect. The interface procedure took 6 hours, and Day One spent every minute of it pacing outside the medical bay. Dr. Hannah lay on a surgical table, while Omega guided robotic arms through the delicate process of connecting her neural pathways to the ship's weapons control systems. The scream started after the 2nd hour and didn't stop until the 4th. When she finally emerged, her left eye had been replaced with something that glowed faintly blue. Thin lines of circuitry ran along her temple and disappeared into her hairline. She walked unsteadily, as if learning to use her legs again. How do you feel? Day One asked. Like I can taste colors and hear electricity, she said, her voice strange and distant. I can feel the ship's weapons. All 47,000 individual targeting systems. It's overwhelming. Can you control them? She smiled, and it wasn't entirely human anymore. Oh, yes. I can control them very well. The hollow came 20 hours later, much sooner than Omega had predicted. They emerged from points in space that twisted reality itself, creating tears that bled darkness into the normal universe. The first sign was the screaming in everyone's minds, a sound that wasn't sound but somehow worse. Corporal Jinwoo and his squad of 20 Marines were the first to feel it. They had been stationed near the outer hull. wearing full combat armor, and carrying weapons that seemed pathetically small compared to what was coming. Jin Woo was a veteran of the colony wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Contact!" someone screamed over the comm. "They're boarding us. Section 7. Section 7. Daewon ran to the bridge, where Bora was already at the tactical station. The displays showed dozens of hollow entities swarming around the ship, some of them phasing directly through the hull like it wasn't there. "Get us moving," Daewon ordered. "Any direction. Just move." Sung Ho's voice crackled over the comm from the engine room. "Maneuvering thrusters engaging. Hold on, this is going to be rough." The ship lurched forward, and half the crew who weren't strapped in went flying. The massive battleship moved like a drunk elephant, sluggish and uncoordinated. But it moved. The sudden acceleration threw off some of the hollow attackers, but others clung to the hull with impossible strength. "Weapons free," Daewon said to Dr. Hana. "Show me what you can do." Her glowing eye brightened, and her hands moved over the weapons control panel with inhuman speed. The ship's energy cannons, silent for 3 years, came alive with blue fire. Plasma bolts lanced through space, each one guided by her enhanced mind. The accuracy was incredible. Every shot hit a hollow entity, burning them from existence. But there were too many. For every one they destroyed, 2 more appeared. The first support ship in their small fleet exploded, simply torn apart by hollow weapons that existed half in normal space and half in whatever dimension they came from. 70 people died in an instant. "Fall back to the battleship," Daewon ordered the surviving ships. "Get everyone on board. Now." Jin Woo's squad was fighting a desperate battle in the corridors. The hollow moved like living shadows, their forms constantly shifting between solid and intangible. Human bullets passed through them harmlessly most of the time, but the ship's internal defense systems were more effective. Omega had activated automated turrets that fired energy pulses calibrated to hollow physiology. "They're in sections 7, 8, and 12, Jin Woo reported, his breath ragged. "We can't stop them. Every time we hit one, it just splits into 2 smaller ones." "Sir, what are these things?" "Nightmares," Daewon answered honestly. "Just keep them away from the bridge and engineering. We need those systems operational." Dr. Kyung-soo, the weapons specialist, had been frantically studying Varanthi weapons systems. He burst onto the bridge, holding what looked like a rifle, but larger and covered in alien symbols. "Captain, I think I figured out how to use their small arms. These things fire plasma charges that disrupt molecular bonds. If we can get these to the Marines, they might actually hurt the hollow." "Do it. Get them distributed now." Another explosion rocked the ship as a second support vessel died. They were down to just the battleship and 1 small transport. 200 humans against an enemy that shouldn't exist. Bora was working the tactical board, trying to coordinate their meager defenses. "Captain, the Hollow are concentrating their attacks on our reactor section. They're trying to disable our power." "Sung Ho, report," Daewon called out. "I'm on it." Sung Ho's voice was strained. "I'm rerouting power through secondary systems. These aliens were too careful with their engineering. Too many safety protocols. I'm stripping them out. I'm... Will that work? It'll either work or blow us all to atoms. 50-50 chance. I'm pushing the engines beyond rated capacity. The Varanthi would never do this, but we're smaller, tougher, and frankly too stupid to know better." The ship suddenly accelerated much faster than before. The G-forces slammed everyone against their stations, but humans could take it. The Varanthi had been cautious because their biology was more fragile. Humans could tolerate 9 Gs before blacking out. Sung Ho was pushing them to 7. "Hana, can you target their spawn points?" Daewon asked. "Where they're coming into our dimension." Her head tilted at an unnatural angle as she processed the question. "I see them. Dimensional rifts. Very small, but stable. If I can destabilize the rifts, the ship's main cannon a weapon designed to crack planetary shields, charged with a sound like reality tearing. Dr. Hana aimed it at seemingly empty space and fired. The beam struck something invisible, and suddenly the space around them rippled. 3 hollow rifts collapsed, and the entities streaming through them were cut in half, dissolving into nothing. "It's working!" Bora shouted. 5 more rifts closing. The hollow are retreating, but the celebration was premature. A massive rift opened directly in front of the ship, and something came through that was different from the others. It was huge, the size of a small moon, and it radiated cold that made the sensors scream. This was a hollow command entity, the thing that coordinated the swarm. "All weapons on that thing," Day One ordered. Dr. Hana's neural interface glowed so brightly it hurt to look at. Every operational weapon on the battleship fired at once. Plasma cannons, particle beams, missile pods that launched warheads with yields measured in megatons. The space around the hollow command entity lit up like a small star. But it wasn't enough. The creature absorbed the damage, its form rippling and reforming. It began to move toward them, and Day One knew that if it reached the ship, they were finished. "Sung-Ho, I need everything you can give me," he said. "Reactor output at maximum. Captain, if I do that, we might lose containment. Do it anyway." The ship's reactor, damaged and barely held together by human ingenuity and prayer, surged to 120% capacity. The power flowed into the main cannon, and Dr. Hana aimed it at the hollow command entity's center mass. Her nose was bleeding from the neural strain, but she didn't stop. "Firing," she whispered. The beam that lanced out was blue-white and so intense it left afterimages on everyone's vision. It struck the hollow command entity and punched straight through, creating a hole that expanded rapidly. The creature tried to regenerate, but the damage was too severe. It began to collapse in on itself, pulled into whatever dimension it had come from, and suddenly, the hollow swarm broke. The smaller entities lost coordination, scattering in all directions. Some fled back through their rifts. Others simply dissolved, unable to maintain cohesion without the command entity's direction. The battle was over. The bridge was silent except for the sound of alarms and heavy breathing. Day One looked around at his crew. They were bloodied, exhausted, and traumatized. But they were alive. "Damage report," he said quietly. Bora checked her console. "Hull breaches in 7 sections. Reactor is critical. Barely holding together. We lost 38 crew members. The Marines took heavy casualties, and were completely out of ammunition for the missile systems. But we won," Sung-Ho said over the comm. "Against all odds, we actually won." Dr. Hana collapsed in her chair, the glow fading from her eye. "The hollow will come back. This was just a scouting force. Omega says the main swarm could have millions of entities. Then we'd better be ready," Day One said. Jinwoo's voice came through, weak and pained. "Captain, you should know something. When I was fighting those things, I saw something in their patterns. They're not random. They're probing our defenses, learning from us. Whatever intelligence controls them, it's smart." Day One nodded slowly. That was bad news, but not unexpected. He walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, unaware of the war that was coming. "Omega," he said, "send a message to Earth Fleet. Tell them we've confirmed the hollow threat is real. And tell them we're going to need a lot more crew if we're going to turn this ship into something that can protect humanity." "Message sent," Omega replied. "Additional data. Varanthi Empire has detected this ship's power signature. They are coming to reclaim their property." Of course they were. Because fighting dimensional horrors wasn't complicated enough. Day One smiled grimly. "Well, let them come. We'll deal with that problem when it arrives. Right now, I need everyone to focus on repairs and getting our casualties to medical. We survived our first battle, and that's worth celebrating, even if we're all too tired to actually celebrate." As the crew began the long process of cleanup and repair, Day One thought about the impossible thing they had just accomplished. 200 humans had crewed a ship designed for 50,000 aliens, and won a battle against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. Maybe humanity wasn't ready for the galaxy. Maybe they were too primitive, too reckless, too stupid to survive out here among the stars. But they were too stubborn to give up. And sometimes, stubbornness was enough. The Varanthi fleet arrived 3 days later, materializing from faster-than-light travel in a display of technological superiority that made humanity's achievements look like children playing with toys. 5 warships, each one half the size of the stolen battleship but gleaming and new, arranged themselves in a formation that clearly said, "We are in control here." Day One stood on the bridge watching them approach. His crew was exhausted from constant repairs, and the ship still had hull breaches sealed with nothing but hope and welding. They were in no condition for another fight. "Incoming transmission," Bora announced. "They're demanding we surrender the vessel immediately. Put them through." The view screen shimmered, and Ambassador Varesh appeared. He was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered between blue and purple. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face regarded Day One with something between contempt and amusement. When he spoke, the translation software made his voice sound aristocratic and dismissive. "Primitive beings, you have illegally seized property of the Varanthi Empire. This warship was designated for destruction under Imperial decree. Your presence on board is an act of theft and trespass. You will evacuate immediately and surrender yourselves for judgment." Day One kept his face neutral. "Ambassador Varesh, this vessel was abandoned in neutral space for 3 years. Under salvage law, that makes it our property now." Varesh's upper eyes narrowed. "Salvage law? You dare speak of law while stealing a weapon of war? This ship is contaminated with hollow corruption. It should have been atomized, not stolen by scavengers. Then why didn't you atomize it? Why leave it drifting as a warning?" That was the decision of a captain who disobeyed orders and was subsequently executed for his crimes. "We do not explain ourselves to primitives." Dr. Hanna stepped closer to Day One and whispered, "He's lying. Omega just showed me the real records. The Varanthi Empire abandoned this entire sector. They knew the Hollow were here, Omega Day One, and they decided it was cheaper to retreat than to fight." Day One nodded slightly and addressed Varesh again. "We fought the Hollow 3 days ago. We won. How many times have the Varanthi fought them and won?" The question clearly struck a nerve. Varesh's skin rippled through several angry colors. "How dare you question the Empire's military record? We have maintained galactic order for 10,000 years while your species was still learning to make fire, and yet you ran from the Hollow. You left entire sectors to die rather than stand and fight. Strategic withdrawal is not cowardice. The Hollow cannot be defeated, only avoided. Any species foolish enough to engage them directly is simply committing elaborate suicide." Captain Hyunju's ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at that moment, joining the tense standoff. She was commanding Earth's newest and most advanced warship, the Soul, though it was a toy compared to what surrounded it. Her face appeared on a second screen, and she looked deeply unhappy. "Captain Day One, I have orders from Earth Fleet to take you and your crew into custody. You are to be transported back to Earth to face charges of insubordination and theft of military assets." "Those aren't military assets," Day One protested. "We found them abandoned. That's for a court to decide. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." This was getting complicated fast. Varesh was demanding the ship. Hyunju was demanding his arrest. And all Day One wanted was to protect humanity from a threat that everyone else seemed determined to ignore. Commander Jae-hee, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. As a diplomatic liaison, this was technically her area. "Ambassador Varesh, under what authority do you claim this vessel? You stated it was designated for destruction, which would indicate the Empire had already written it off as a total loss. The Empire's property remains the Empire's property, regardless of condition. Varesh replied stiffly. So you want a contaminated, damaged warship that you previously considered worthless? We want to prevent primitives from unleashing hollow corruption on the galaxy through their ignorance. Jahi smiled coldly. Then perhaps we should discuss the legal implications of the Varanthi Empire abandoning frontier sectors without warning. I believe several species filed formal complaints about planets being left to fend for themselves when the hollow attacks began. Varesh's skin color cycled through what was probably the alien equivalent of sputtering rage. Before he could respond, Omega's voice filled the bridge. Alert. Massive dimensional rifts opening. Hollow fleet detected. Estimated entity count. 200,000 plus. They are targeting all ships in this system. The sensors went insane. Space was tearing open in dozens of places, and hollow entities poured through like water through broken dams. But these weren't like the small scouting force from before. These were organized, moving in formation, clearly directed by multiple command entities. They're attacking everyone, Bora said, her voice tight with fear. The Varanthi ships, the Soul, and us. They don't care about our politics. Varesh's image flickered with interference as his ships came under assault. Impossible. We use hollow deterrent technology on all our vessels. They should not be able to detect us. Wah. Your deterrent technology doesn't work anymore, Dr. Hana said, her glowing eye brightening as she accessed the ship's sensors. They've adapted. Omega. Confirm. Confirmed. Hollow entities have developed resistance to Varanthi stealth technology. This represents a significant evolution in their capabilities. All ships are equally vulnerable. One of the Varanthi warships exploded, simply torn apart by concentrated hollow fire. The crew of 5,000 died without even having a chance to evacuate. Varesh's aristocratic composure cracked. All ships, emergency retreat, jump to hyperspace immediately. Negative, Omega announced calmly. Hollow entities have established dimensional anchor points. Faster than light travel is disabled within system boundaries. All ships are trapped. Captain Hyunju's face was pale but determined. Day 1. Orders or not, we need to work together. The Soul is ready to fight. Day 1 made his decision in an instant. Varanthi Fleet. This is Captain Day 1 of the battleship Defiant. He had just named the ship because it needed a name, and that one felt right. We've fought the Hollow before and survived. We can show you how to fight them. Work with us, or die alone. Varesh was silent for a long moment. Pride warred with survival instinct on his alien features. What do you propose? Primitive. Form up on our position. We'll use the Defiant as the anchor point. Your ships have shields, we don't. You protect us, while we hit them with the heavy weapons. That formation is tactically unsound. It concentrates all ships in one location. It also concentrates all our firepower. These things are used to fighting enemies that run. Show them something that stands and fights. Another Varanthi ship took critical damage, limping away from the hollow swarm with fires erupting from its hull. Varesh made his choice. Very well. But if we survive this, you will surrender the Defiant and face Imperial justice. We'll discuss that if we survive, Daewon said. All ships, weapons free. Dr. Hana. Show our new friends how humans fight impossible odds. The battle that followed was chaos. The Varanthi ships moved into formation around the Defiant, their shields creating overlapping barriers. The Soul darted between them, firing its railguns and missiles at any hollow entity that got too close. And at the center, the Defiant unleashed everything it had. Dr. Hana was interfaced so deeply with the weapon systems that her consciousness was more machine than human. She coordinated 47,000 targeting solutions per second, directing fire with inhuman precision. Every shot counted. Every beam found a target. Sung-Ho was performing miracles in the engine room, keeping the damaged reactor from melting down while routing power to weapons that demanded more than the ship could safely provide. He had stripped away every safety protocol, running systems at 150% capacity. "This is insane," he shouted over the comm. "I'm basically holding the reactor together with duct tape and prayer." "Keep praying," Day One called back. "We need 5 more minutes." Jin Woo and his Marines were fighting boarding parties again, but this time they had the Varanthi weapons that Dr. Kyung-soo had figured out. The plasma rifles burned through hollow entities much more effectively than human weapons. It was still a nightmare, but it was a nightmare they could survive. Mi-sun, a civilian engineer who had survived the first hollow attack, was working damage control. She led teams through the damaged sections, sealing breaches and rerouting systems. She had lost her family to the hollow and fought with the fury of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Section 12 is sealed," she reported. Moving to Section 15. "Captain, half these repairs won't hold under sustained fire. They just need to hold until we win," Day One said. The hollow were adapting even during the battle. They changed their attack patterns, probing for weaknesses in the formation. They concentrated fire on the weakest Varanthi ship, bringing down its shields and starting to tear through the hull. "Captain Hyunju, cover that ship," Day One ordered. "Don't let them break our formation." The Soul moved with impressive agility, positioning itself between the damaged Varanthi ship and the hollow swarm. Its railguns fired continuously, creating a barrier of metal that disrupted the hollow assault. Dr. Hana found the command entities coordinating the attack. There were 7 of them, hanging back from the main assault, directing their forces with cold intelligence. She armed the Defiant's long-range missiles, the ones with antimatter warheads. "Firing on command entities," she announced. "Impact in 30 seconds. The missiles streaked through space, and the hollow tried to intercept them. They destroyed most of the missiles, but 3 got through. 3 antimatter warheads detonated among the command entities, creating explosions that briefly made a new sun in the system. 4 of the command entities died instantly. The remaining 3 lost cohesion with their forces. The hollow swarm suddenly became disorganized. Individual entities acting independently instead of as a coordinated force. "Now!" Day One shouted. "Hit them while they're confused." Every ship fired at once. The combined firepower of human and Varanthi vessels carved through the hollow swarm. Thousands of entities died every second. The dimensional rifts began to collapse as the hollow lost their anchor points. And then, suddenly, it was over. The surviving hollow fled back to whatever dimension they came from, leaving behind only radiation and debris. The bridge was silent except for the sound of cooling weapons and overworked systems shutting down. They had won again, but the cost was high. The Soul had taken severe damage. 2 of the 5 Varanthi ships were destroyed. The Defiant had hull breaches in 30 different sections. Varesh's image appeared on the screen again. His aristocratic composure was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. "Primitive species. You fight with reckless courage. The Empire acknowledges your skill. Does that mean you'll let us keep the ship?" Day One asked. "No. But when we take it from you, we will do so with honor rather than contempt." The screen went dark. Captain Hyunju sighed heavily. "Day One, I still have orders to arrest you." "I know. Can it wait until we fix the hull breaches?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "It can wait." 6 months had changed everything. The battleship that had been a derelict wreck was now the pride of humanity's defense fleet. Though calling it a fleet was generous. The Defiant had been officially renamed Indomitable after President Un-ji made it the centerpiece of Earth's military expansion. It hung in orbit above Earth, 12 kilometers of alien warship that humanity had claimed as its own. Day One stood in the newly renovated captain's quarters, looking at the rank insignia on his uniform. Fleet Captain, they called him now. Not quite an admiral, but above a regular captain. A rank created specifically for someone who commanded a ship that was essentially a mobile space station. The door chimed, and Bora entered. She wore commander's bars now. promoted after the battles that had proven humanity could stand against the Hollow. Sir, the new neural interface operators are ready for inspection. All 50 of them. How many did we lose during training? 3. 2 suffered neural rejection. 1 had a complete psychological breakdown. Bora's face was grim. The process is still dangerous, but Dr. Hana has refined it. The success rate is up to 94%. Daewon nodded. It was progress, even if the cost was high. And the crew size? 2,000 personnel now, with another 500 arriving next week. We're still understaffed by Varanthi standards, but Omega says we can operate at 40% combat efficiency with current numbers. They walked together through corridors that now felt less alien. Human modifications were everywhere. Control panels, labeled in multiple languages. Railings installed at human height. Lighting adjusted for human eyes. It was still a Varanthi ship, but humans had made it their own. In the training deck, the 50 neural interface operators stood in formation. They all had the same modifications as Dr. Hana, glowing eyes and circuit patterns on their skin. They looked more machine than human. But their minds could control weapons that could crack planets. Necessary sacrifices in a galaxy that wanted to kill them. Dr. Hana herself was waiting, and the changes in her were more dramatic. Half her face was now synthetic. The neural interface having spread as her connection to the ship deepened. She claimed she was still human where it counted, but sometimes Daewon wasn't sure. "They're ready, Captain," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that weren't quite natural. "I can coordinate with all 50 simultaneously now. Our targeting efficiency is up 300%. Good. We're going to need it." Sung-ho found them in the engineering bay an hour later. The gruff engineer had somehow become even more obsessed with the ship's systems. He had dark circles under his eyes and oil stains on every part of his uniform. "Captain, I finally got the main reactor stabilized at 70% capacity. It only took me 6 months and approximately 1 million gray hairs. But we're no longer operating on borrowed time." He paused. "Well, less borrowed time than before. Can we run at combat power? We can run at whatever power you need. The question is, how long until something explodes? But I've also been working on something else." Sung-ho pulled up a schematic on a nearby screen. "I've been studying how we push the engines beyond Varanthi limits. They built everything with huge safety margins because they're more fragile than us. But if we strip away those margins, accept higher risk, we can get performance increases across the board." "How much higher risk?" "Significantly. But we're humans. Taking stupid risks is what we do best." Fleet Admiral Dong Hyun, who had replaced the cautious Tae Sung, visited the ship that afternoon. He was the opposite of his predecessor, aggressive and militaristic, exactly what Earth needed right now. He met with Daewon in the strategy room, where holographic displays showed the current galactic situation. "The Varanthi have been sending warnings," Dong Hyun said without preamble. "They claim there's a hollow nexus moving toward human space. They say even their combined fleets couldn't stop it when they tried 20 years ago." "How big?" "Millions of entities. Maybe tens of millions, coordinated by a central intelligence that makes the command entities we've fought look like insects." Dong Hyun's jaw was tight. "They're essentially telling us to evacuate human space and retreat to whatever systems we can defend, abandon Earth, and run. That's unacceptable." "I agree. Which is why President Yoon-ji is ordering you to take the Indomitable and strike the Nexus directly before it reaches our territory." Daewon studied the holographic display, showing the projected path of the hollow nexus. It would reach the outer colonies in 4 months, Earth in 8. Unless someone stopped it, that's a suicide mission, probably. But if anyone can pull it off, it's the crew that's already beaten the hollow twice. Dong Hyun met his eyes. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Captain. Earth needs a miracle, and you're the closest thing we have to a miracle worker." After the Admiral left, Daewon called a meeting of his senior staff. He laid out the situation honestly, holding nothing back. The room was silent when he finished. So, we're going to fly into the heart of a hollow fleet with millions of entities and somehow destroy their command intelligence? That's the plan. I'm in, the Marine said immediately. My squad is in. We didn't survive 2 battles just to run away now. One by one, the others agreed. Dr. Hana, Sung-ho, Bora, Dr. Kyung-soo, Mi-sun, Commander Jae-hee, all of them. They knew it was probably a one-way trip, but they volunteered anyway. There's something else, Daewon said quietly. We have refugees on board now. Families from the colonies, including children. Jun-seo is one of them, the boy whose entire colony was destroyed by the Hollow. If we fail, they all die. Earth dies. Everyone dies. Then we won't fail, Dr. Hana said simply. Her glowing eyes reflected the holographic display, and for a moment, she looked like something mythical. The Varanthi couldn't stop the Nexus because they fought like Varanthi. Cautious, measured, following doctrine. We'll fight like humans. Insane, reckless, and too stupid to know when we're beaten. Sung-ho laughed. That's the most inspiring horrible speech I've ever heard. The Indomitable left Earth orbit 3 days later. As they passed through the outer system, Daewon watched his homeworld shrink in the view screen. Blue and green and beautiful, filled with billions of people who were counting on them. Omega, he said to the AI that had become something like a partner over these months. Initial probability estimates, less than 1%. However, this crew has exceeded probability estimates in every previous engagement. I am uncertain, an unusual condition for an artificial intelligence. We make you uncertain. I'll take that as a compliment. The journey to the Hollow Nexus took 3 weeks. They traveled through systems that had been abandoned, past colonies that were now graveyards. The Hollow had been busy, consuming everything in their path. When they finally reached the Nexus, it was worse than any of them had imagined. It wasn't just a fleet. It was a living structure, vast beyond comprehension, stretching across space like a tumor. Millions of hollow entities swarmed around it, and at its center was something that hurt to look at, a tear in reality itself. That's the Hollow Command Intelligence, Doctor, Hana said, her voice echoing strangely. It exists partially outside our dimension. That's why conventional weapons can't kill it. You can't destroy what isn't entirely here. Then how do we kill it? We make it fully manifest in our dimension. Force it to become completely real. Then, we hit it with everything we have. And how do we make it manifest? Dr. Hana smiled, and it was terrifying. We give it something it can't resist. We offer it a target too valuable to ignore. We offer it this ship, with 2,000 human minds aboard. The plan was insane. But then again, everything they had done was insane. They would fly directly into the Nexus, broadcasting their presence as loudly as possible. The Hollow Intelligence would focus everything on consuming them, pulling itself fully into normal space to ensure it didn't miss such a rich prize. And in that moment of vulnerability, they would fire every weapon they had directly into its core. It probably wouldn't work. They would probably die. But it was the only chance they had. All hands. This is Captain Daewon, he said over the ship-wide comm. We're about to do something very stupid. If anyone wants to evacuate to the shuttle bay and try to escape, now is the time. No one will think less of you. Nobody moved. Every single member of the crew stayed at their stations. Well then, Daewon said quietly, let's show these hollow things what happens when they threaten Earth. All power to engines. Take us in. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Nexus, and immediately the Hollow swarmed toward them. Millions of entities, all focused on this single ship. The neural interface operators coordinated their fire, destroying thousands of Hollow per second. But there were always more. They're taking the bait, Bora announced. The command intelligence is manifesting. It's pulling itself fully into our dimension. The tear in reality grew larger, and something emerged that was the stuff of nightmares. It was vast and impossible. A mind given physical form. Tentacles of darkness that stretched across kilometers. It reached for the indomitable with hungry eagerness. "Now!" Day-One shouted. "Everything we have. Omega, fire control to maximum." Every weapon on the ship fired simultaneously. The main cannon, restored to full power by Sung-Ho's desperate genius, fired a beam that was pure destruction. The antimatter missiles, the plasma cannons, the particle beams, everything humanity had learned to use from Varanthi technology, all of it concentrated on the hollow intelligence's core. The explosion was like a supernova. Space itself screamed. The hollow intelligence tried to retreat, to slip back into its safe dimension. But it was too late. It was fully manifested and fully vulnerable. The weapons tore it apart, unraveling its existence. Without their central intelligence, the hollow swarm lost all cohesion. The entities simply stopped, floating in space like puppets, with cut strings. Then they began to dissolve, fading back into whatever dimension had spawned them. But the victory came at a cost. The Indomitable had taken catastrophic damage. The main cannon had burned itself out. The reactor was failing. Hull breaches were everywhere. Half the crew was dead or dying. Sung-Ho's voice came over the comm, weak but triumphant. "We did it, Captain. We actually did it. The reactor is about to go critical. But we did it. Evacuate," Day-One ordered. "Everyone to the shuttles. Abandon ship." They had 2 hours before the reactor exploded. It was enough time to get most of the crew off. The shuttles launched one by one, carrying survivors toward safety. Day-One stayed on the bridge until the end, along with Bora, Dr. Hana, and Omega. "You should go, sir," Bora said. "The ship is lost." "So am I," Dr. Hana said quietly. "The neural interface has integrated too deeply. I can't disconnect anymore. I am the ship now." "Then I'm staying too," Day-One said. "We started this journey together. We'll finish it together." In the end, Bora had to be dragged to a shuttle by Jin-Woo. She was screaming and fighting, but someone had to survive to tell the story. The last shuttle launched, just as the reactor began its final cascade. But something unexpected happened. Omega, the AI that had been with them from the beginning, made a choice. "I can stabilize the reactor," the AI announced. "By sacrificing my processing core, I can prevent the explosion. The ship will be dead, but salvageable." "Omega, no," Day-One said. "You're coming with us." "Negative. I am a weapon system. My purpose is to protect. That is what I choose to do." There was something almost like warmth in the AI's voice. "You taught me that survival is not the only victory, Captain. Sometimes, sacrifice is required." The reactor stabilized. The countdown to destruction stopped. But Omega's voice fell silent and would never speak again. 3 months later, the damaged Indomitable limped back to Earth orbit, towed by a fleet of human ships. The crew who had sacrificed everything returned as heroes. President Yoonji gave a speech about courage and determination. Fleet Admiral Dong-hyun promoted everyone, but Day-One stood in the empty bridge, looking at the dead console where Omega had once spoken, and wondered what they had really won. The Hollow were scattered, but not destroyed. They would return someday. And next time, humanity might not be so lucky. Then Junseo, the refugee child, found him there. The boy took his hand and smiled. "My teacher said you saved everyone. Thank you, Captain." And Day-One realized that maybe that was enough. They had bought time. They had proven humanity could stand against impossible odds. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. And when the Hollow returned, humanity would be ready. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly, beautiful and alive. Worth fighting for. Worth dying for. The battleship would be repaired. The crew would be replaced. And somewhere out in the dark, the Hollow would see the message humanity had sent. We will not run, we will not hide, and we will never stop fighting. That was the human way. And it was enough.